All right. So, as Martha had talked about, I'm going to be giving you all an overview of adult education in New Mexico. And just before we get started on that, please know that adult education used to be referred to as adult basic education. We removed the B from that because this is not anything basic. What our students do is not basic by any stretch of the imagination. So, we have renamed it adult education. And a lot of you are probably or most likely familiar with GED as an acronym. As Jim Snyder talked about earlier when he used the terms ABE and HSE, that's also been renamed to HSC. So whenever I use that acronym, that stands for high school equivalency, and that is kind of in place of GED. And that is because there are two different tests now in New Mexico that students can take to earn their high school equivalency credential. And that is the HiSET and GED test. So you won't really hear me using that term GED, but it is really synonymous with HSE. All right, so again, my name is Jamie Trujillo. I am the program director of the Albuquerque Adult Learning Center, which is a local 501c3 nonprofit in Albuquerque that provides high school equivalency and other services that I'll talk about in a little bit. And I am also the board president of the New Mexico Adult Education Association, and I will talk more about what that state association does as well. So first, I wanted to start off with just a picture of what adult education looks like in New Mexico. So adult education is multifaceted. We're not just talking about high school equivalency. We're not talking about passing a test. Yes, that is part of it, but there is more that goes along with it. It includes English as a second language or a second or other language for students who maybe speak 4 or 5 languages and are learning English. So that includes that type of instruction as well as literacy instruction. What that means is this is for students who are functioning below a 3rd grade level, especially in reading and writing. So we're talking about those reading and writing basics. And then we have high school equivalency credential exam preparation. Like I mentioned, that's the HiSET or the GED test. And that can include anything from 4th grade up. So sometimes we'll use the term pre-HSC for students who are functioning anywhere between a 4th and a 9th grade level. And then we have the HSC prep, which is 9th grade and above. There are a lot of programs that mix those levels. There are a lot of other programs that separate those levels, but it all goes into that same umbrella, the high school equivalency credential prep, as well as career pathways support. And, I'll probably mention WIOA a little bit here and there, but that is, federal legislation that talks about workforce readiness in a nutshell, and adult education is a big part of that. For my program, the Albuquerque Adult Learning Center, we like to think of ourselves as a career pathways support program overall. What we are trying to do is help our students get into a career pathway, and that includes getting that high school equivalency credential. And then the last part, which is that higher education transition support, whether it be an apprenticeship program, a certificate program, a 2-year degree, a 4-year degree, or beyond that. We try to provide that kind of support to help our students transition from being a high school equivalency credential graduate to being a higher education graduate. So all of these services are encompassed in what adult education does. And it is funded really in several different ways, but there are some main funding sources for the adult education programs. The vast majority of the adult education programs are funded by the New Mexico Higher Education Department. So you all know Amy Anderson. She works for the Higher Education Department's Adult Education Division, and they provide funding to 26 adult education or ESL programs and 16 literacy programs throughout the state. So these are, for a lot of programs, the main source of funding for their adult education services, and that does include my program. There are also programs that operate out of higher education institutions such as UNM, CNM, NMSU, and others. And so some of these programs do receive additional funding from their parent institutions. That's not always the case, but sometimes they do have an extra pot of funding there. And then other adult education funding comes from other grant sources like private donors, foundations, and corporate donations. For example, Dollar General is a very large supporter of literacy, whether it be family literacy or adult literacy. They have provided those types of grants for many years. United Way of North Central New Mexico has also been a funder for adult education programs. And other donors like the New Senda Community Foundation or PNM as a corporate entity, they will sometimes fund adult education programs. And as a nonprofit, the Albuquerque Adult Learning Center spends a lot of time looking for those other sources of funding because we do not have institutional support because we are not tied to a higher education institution. One thing to note is that most classes are 100% free. There are a few programs that charge a very small intake fee. That money goes right back to the students. But for the most part, and this is ABQ ALC included, the classes are 100% free. And the testing vouchers, which they cover the GED or the HiSET testing fees, these vouchers that pay those testing fees are provided by the New Mexico Higher Education Department's Adult Education Division. One very important thing to note about those vouchers, because these are wonderful and we are incredibly appreciative of these vouchers, is that they are also available to the general public. If you were to go to NMHED's adult education site, you can see that there's a place to apply for those vouchers. So if a person that was not attending classes at an adult education program took the official GED or HiSET practice test and passed it, they could use those passing scores to apply for the voucher. And then they wouldn't have to pay the testing fee, which can range anywhere from a little over $50 to $80 for the entire battery of tests. So a student could very well come to an adult education program and pay nothing to get their high school equivalency credential. So that's one thing that's very important to note whenever you have any clients who do not have that high school equivalency credential, that they do not have to pay for these services. Now, just to give you just a little bit, I'm not going to focus on statistics all that much except for these two slides, but in 2021, which is the most recent year that we have the data for, we served over 5,000 students statewide. Now, what this includes, although it's not all encompassing, is almost 1,500 English language learners, over 1,300 basic literacy learners, and over 2,200 high school equivalency learners. So I want to, kind of zero in a little bit and just give you an example of what the Albuquerque Adult Learning Center in particular provides. And this is really similar to what I was talking about earlier with adult education in general. But these are the services that, as a 501c3 nonprofit in Albuquerque, ABQ ALC provides. So we just started an ESL class for students who specifically live in the International District. We recently got a grant through the District Attorney's Office. It's a crime prevention sub-grant that is focused on the International District. And so we have two classes that are running right now that provide, we have one morning and one evening class that provides ESL instruction for those students. So if you know of anybody who specifically lives in the International District who is in need of that kind of service, I will have my email address at the end of this. Please reach out to me and we can get them going. And the same is true for any of these services, of course. We also have a foundations class. So this is the same as basic literacy. We just don't call it that. Generally, need to learn how to read. The students are at least at a level where they have basic phonics and they can read, but they do not have a reading level that is sufficient to really get them into that high school equivalency level. So for those students that test at NRS levels 1 or 2, and just to give you a little bit of an overview of what that means, they have to take a pre-exam called the Test of Adult Basic Education, or TABE, and the TABE will give them NRS levels in reading, writing, and which is language, reading, language, and math. And there are 6 levels. So 1 and 2 are the literacy levels, 3 and 4 are the intermediate levels, and 5 and 6 are the high levels, or the high school equivalency levels. So for those first 2 levels, which, like I said, go below second or below 3rd grade, in reading or language, those students will start in a foundations class. And then from there, or if they test high enough already to begin with, they will go to a pre-HSC or even HSC level class, which pre-HSC is students who test at NRS levels 3 and 4, those intermediate levels, like I talked about. And then the HSC levels are NRS levels 5 and 6. And so our pre-HSC and HSC students are mixed. So we do have students in the same class who might be at level 3 in reading mixed with somebody who might be at a level 5 or 6 in reading, but they all work together. And then we have our family literacy. So this is something that, even though it is also a pre-HSC/HSC class, we've added the family literacy component to this one class. It's only one evening class that we have right now, but what it is the students who have children aged 4 and up who want to learn alongside their children can choose to enroll in this particular class, and they can bring their kids with them and they learn together throughout that cohort. So that is, like I said, just one of our classes, but that's our family literacy cohort. And then we also have transition support. So this is usually one-on-one individualized help that students can get with resume writing, job searching, or job applications, post-secondary searches, any kind of post-secondary institution, applications, scholarships, etc. Now, we do have a partnership with UNM's EOC program, so we tend to refer our students who are close to finishing to that program so that they can get one-on-one help with filling out the FAFSA, filling out any kind of admissions applications. The EOC program has been really wonderful about doing that. They'll come to our classes, they'll give presentations to our students, so our students don't have to feel lost in that process. So specifically for post-secondary, that's what we tend to do, is partner with UNM's EOC program. For all the others, our student success coordinator has been helping the students with resume writing and other things like that. And the instructors also help students when students come to them and say that they would like help with that. So that's what Albuquerque Adult Learning Center offers overall. So now I'm going to switch hats, and please forgive me, I don't see the chat right now, so I can't see if there's any questions, but I will absolutely make sure to answer the questions at the end of this. But I'm going to switch over to the New Mexico Adult Education Association, which is a lot bigger. This is the state association for New Mexico. So like I mentioned, NMEA is a state association or organization that provides professional development primarily. So what this means is we provide at least one annual conference a year for all adult education providers to attend. And we also have regional, what we call teachers institutes. These are specifically geared toward teachers networking with each other, learning from each other. Only local teachers are presenters. And so it's a really great opportunity for teachers in similar regions of the state to network and learn from each other. We're actually having our first Teachers Institute of 2023 on February 11th at the CNM Montoya campus. So that's very exciting. It's the first in-person Teachers Institute we've had since before 2020. So we're really excited about that. On top of these in-person events, we also have regular webinars, which are usually technology-based, but not always. And so we will have either webinar series or one-off webinars that we offer. And these are all free, these webinars anyway, and the Teachers Institutes are all free to NMEA members. The annual conference is at a discount for NMEA members. And so we try to provide regular professional development. There's usually at least a webinar going on every single week. We also provide a lot of opportunity for networking. So aside from networking during our professional development opportunities, we also will send out information to the listservs. We will make sure that the instructors or any other adult education professional is aware of what is going on within the state. The adult ed community in New Mexico is pretty small and tight-knit, so we tend to know each other well, and so we can network with each other and provide referrals to anybody else who might have expertise in several areas. So NMEA tries to be the organization that fosters that type of networking. Another big thing that NMEA is really taking a bigger stand in is advocacy. And what I mean by that is legislative advocacy. So what we do, and I play a big role in this as the president, is we talk with state level legislators, senators, representatives, to advocate for an increase in the adult education funding every year. It should come as no surprise because this is true for a lot of things with education. Adult education is underfunded. And so what we are trying to do is to, one, make sure that legislators know what adult education is. What is our role? What do we do? What are the services that we provide? And we talk about the value of those services. We have some students who are trained to be ambassadors that will go to these meetings with us and share their stories with these legislators so that our state government representatives know that what we are doing is very essential. So that education is a huge piece. The next piece is showing them, literally showing them why we need more funding. What would we do with that funding? What are the initiatives that we're doing? Professional development is a big part of that. We, this year, started the Propel Professional Learning Portal. And Propel, the sole purpose of this entity, Propel, is to make sure that adult education professionals receive the ample opportunities for professional development. And NMEA is the nonprofit organization that is receiving a professional development grant to make sure that Propel gets to do what it needs to do. So, that advocacy piece, going back to that, we make sure that our legislators know what we are doing with those types of initiatives. In addition, anybody who is a NMEA member gets joint memberships to several other organizations. In the state, we have NMTSAL, the New Mexico Teachers of English and English as a second and other language. So that's, a New Mexico ESL association. It's a joint membership, as well as COABE and MPAEA. So COABE is the Coalition on Adult Basic Education. That's a national organization. And then MPAEA is the Mountain Plains Adult Education Association. That is the regional association. So all of this for $25 a year, an individual can get a membership to NMEA, NMTSAL, MPAEA, and COABE all together. And as far as MPAEA and COABE are concerned, that really opens up more doors to professional development and networking because it opens it up to regional and national level types of networking. So like I mentioned, membership is only $25 a year at this point for that membership. Our website, and I can put this in the chat later on as well, is www.nmadulted.org. So if you are interested in membership with NMEA, please go to our website. You can just go to membership and there's an online form that you can fill out and become members of the organization. So the last thing I wanted to talk about, because this is, I think a big part of what this group is trying to accomplish, is getting students into higher education. What are the difficulties in getting adult education students into higher education? Now, what I want to share with you are things that I learned just simply from my own experience. So this is not by any means meant to be all-encompassing. This is just what I have learned as being an instructor and then an administrator with adult education. So our students can experience several different roadblocks to higher education. Part of it could be intimidation. So the prospect of filling out scholarship and financial aid and admissions applications can be intimidating. And I know that there are many, if not all, of the adult ed programs try to make sure that they have someone or more than one person on staff who can help students with this, or they have partnerships either within their own institution or within other institutions that they can refer students to the right people that can help them out with this. But just the thought of it, even when the student isn't close to the point where they're ready to take the high school equivalency exam, when they start thinking about college, it can just be very intimidating. They don't know where to start. And that brings me to the next part, is even if the idea of filling out all those forms isn't as intimidating for some students, they might not really know their own goals. With ABQ ALC, we do our very best to try to get students to engage in goal setting right from the beginning. Right in our onboarding process during our orientation sessions, we talk about goal setting, especially setting smarter goals. And so we try to get the students to start thinking about what they want to do beyond the high school equivalency credential. But this isn't always cut and dry. A student may come in and say, I don't know, or, well, I want to be a nurse because I heard that nurses make great money. And I've had students say just that. They want to get into the medical field because they know that they'll make a lot of money without realizing what that really means, the type of college investment that they would need to make in order to be a registered nurse, or even just working in the medical field in general is not for everyone. But they don't really have that understanding just yet. And so in the course of their high school equivalency journey, they may not really know what those career goals are, or they may change those goals. They may not know what they have to do to achieve those goals. And so that can be really intimidating and difficult for some students. And then there are external factors. So the first two are relatively internal, they're kind of fighting with themselves about this. But then the external factors may come into play. The student may not know anyone who has been to college. They may be the first person in their family to go to college. They may feel like they're not quote unquote college material, or that they wouldn't be able to succeed in college because college is hard. Even though they may not have even talked to anybody who's been to college, that may be the interpretation that they have. That may be what they've been told. One thing that we've noticed with our students with Albuquerque Adult Learning Center is this all-encompassing fear of success. Fear of failure is definitely an issue, but fear of success is the same. It can be just as debilitating. Sometimes we see students who come to class every day, but the moment they get to the point where they're almost ready to take their test, they stop coming. They come a little bit less and a little bit less, or they stop coming altogether. And sometimes, I think that, and we've been told this by students, they get into a pattern, they're comfortable with it. And the idea of having to change that, having to move on, is just not something they want to think about. They're content and happy with the routine that they have, and they do not want to change that. And so that fear of success, that fear of being expected to do something more, or even that fear of achieving something that nobody else that they know has done, which would then make them different or other, can be very hard for our students. And so we have actually talked to our students about that phenomenon, that fear of success, and talked to them about the importance of really knowing that their true potential could be beyond anything that they've ever considered. So again, these are just things that, we've experienced with our program that our students have told us, or that we've just observed even with our students when they make certain comments like, oh, I'm doing really well here, and that's what they just want to do. So those are, just a few things that could be stopping students. So how can higher ed institutions better support adult ed students and programs? Well, there are several ways that higher ed institutions can do this. First, connect with adult education program staff. Add them to your email lists. Anytime you have a presentation or a college fair or anything that you are sending out via email, make sure that the adult education programs in your area, or even, directly outside of your area, are getting that information. I know that I get information from CNM regularly. And so, that kind of thing can be distributed to adult education students regularly. Aside from just email blasts, you can provide your paper materials to programs, your flyers, your trifolds, anything like that, that the programs can then distribute to their students. Now, this is kind of passive. These are passive but still effective ways to support adult education. But there are some more active ways that you can also do that. You can partner with adult education programs to be warm handoffs. So what I mean by that is one of your staff can be the contact for the adult ed program staff to make sure that when they have a student who is ready to enter into your higher ed institution, that they go to that person. And it will be a warm handoff between the adult ed staff and the higher ed staff with that student in between. What we have found is that when students they're not just given a card, they're not just told, hey, email or call this person, the adult ed staffer actually makes that connection and makes sure that the student gets connected with that staffer. That is more effective. You can also come to adult education programs and give presentations to the adult ed students during class. What I found is our instructors are always very happy to have people from the different higher ed institutions come to their classes to talk to the students about what they offer, especially if you have some kind of a program that is relatively new, that may have some financial assistance opportunities with it. The students are always eager to learn about these things. And then lastly, if you were to become a NMEA member, not only are you part of that network, but you would know when we are having our conferences. And so that would give your staff an opportunity to come and give workshops to the adult ed staff about what you do so that they can provide that information to their students. Now, one thing that NMEA is trying to start doing is increasing our student membership in NMEA. We don't really have that right now. And so we want to start offering that kind of support to students where they are more active, meaning they would start attending the professional development opportunities. They would start attending the conferences, and there could be workshops directly for the students. And so, as NMEA grows and builds, which is the phase that we are in right now, we can do that. We can offer those types of connection opportunities for you. So, and again, not an all-encompassing list, but these are just some suggestions as to how, if you work for a higher ed institution, you can better support the adult ed programs and students in New Mexico. So with that, I will stop my screen share, and I will put this in the chat as well, but my email address is jamie@abqalc.org. So please feel free, if you have any questions now, I'm happy to answer them. But if you think of anything after the fact, or if you just want to connect with our program, Albuquerque Adult Learning Center, please feel free to shoot me an email and we can do that.